friends, welcome to this another episode of Gospel Reflections in the book of Genesis, chapter 17, entitled, God Gives the Blessing Not Because You're Faithful, but because He is faithful. It wasn't only Hagar who experienced God in Genesis 17. We see how God revealed Himself to Abram and to his entire family. God made a promise and changed their names, Abram to Abraham, and Sarai to Sarah. The same day, the name of the promised son was given Isaac, meaning the one who laughs, the one who rejoices. The son was not given in a normal way. Isaac was born when the mother is already past the bearing age. Genesis 17 verses 3 to 8 records the covenant promise of God. Abram fell face down, and God said to him, "As for me, this is my covenant with you. You will be the father of many nations. No longer will you be called Abram. Your name will be Abraham, for I have made you a father of many nations. I will make you very fruitful. I will make nations of you, and kings will come from you. I will establish my covenant as an everlasting covenant between me and you and your descendants after you for the generations to come, to be your God and the God of your descendants after you. The whole land of Canaan, where you now reside as a foreigner, I will give as an everlasting possession to you and your descendants after you, and I will be their God." Then, verses 10 and 11, God added the substance of His covenant, the sign of God fulfilling the covenant and man trusting in the covenant. "This is my covenant with you and your descendants after you, the covenant you are to keep. Every male among you shall be circumcised. You are to undergo circumcision, and it will be the sign of the covenant between me and you." Circumcision is a sign of God giving the ultimate promise He made at Genesis 3, the deliverer, the Messiah of God's people. Circumcision is pointing to Jesus Christ and His works of saving and redeeming God's people. God asked Abram, now turned Abraham, to keep the commandments, not for God to love Abraham or for God to continually bless Abraham, but for God to protect the relationship with a continued choice of Abraham to be with God. If Abraham will continue to do the circumcision, it is a sign that he is continually trusting God's promises of provision of the coming Savior of God's people. Commandment is only effective to people who understand God's love. Keeping the commandment is their loving response to love relationship with God. It is the lifestyle of God's people, daily transformed by the love of God. It is not the obedience of the commandment that has the power in their lives. It is the promise of God's love. It is the experience of God's love that changes their lives. It is the life of Abraham. It wasn't his keeping the commandment that made God change his name, but it was God's love for him that God gave Abraham his blessings. God sees us and He changes names. This is the ultimate message of the keeping a relationship with God, keeping an experience with God's love. God can change us. God changes us first before we are given the guidelines on how to live godly lives. We know, understand, experience, and are changed by the love of God first before the commandment will take effect in our lives. For people who does not know the love of God, the commandment will become their way of salvation and way or of pleasing God, or it will make them more presumptuous and assume the love of God by deliberately doing and living the sinful life. Those who will treat the law or the commandment like the measure of godliness and like the basis of living life for their own selfish motive do not really have the experience with Jesus. Please know that we are so grateful for giving us a few minutes of your time. God bless you with His enduring presence in Jesus in your life today. This is Bethel from the Touch Point. Please remember, beginning with Moses and all the prophets, all what is written in the Bible is all about Christ.